Hello, fellow pole nerd. Welcome to the podcast. This is Science of Slink. I have a research background in cognitive behavioral and social science and also personal training, and also I'm a pole teacher online. My goal is really for us all to be able to take information and apply it to our pole lives in a way that makes us happier, healthier, and increases the longevity in our movement. So let's hop in. Welcome to Science of Slink, a very exciting episode for y'all. Today, I'm going to be talking about dizziness and pole and spin tolerance and how to spin faster, longer without feeling like you're going to hurl or getting like really motion sick. And we're going to dive into all of this, but I just want to preface this by saying this is not medical advice. I'm a doctor, but I'm not the type of doctor you would go to for help with medical stuff. My degree is from a linguistics department, so not going to be able to help you with anything medical. If you've got vertigo, if you've got dizziness, if it's really impacting you negatively, definitely talk to a medical doctor or potentially a physical therapist, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I am talking to healthy folks who want to do pole, want to spin more and faster and have a good time and not feel bad in their bodies afterwards, and how we can help you get there. So just from a performance angle. So when we're talking about spin pole, our ability to tolerate spin, this is going to be different for different individuals. It's going to depend on, your sort of base tolerance. It's going to depend on some factors we're going to talk about later. It's also going to depend on how much you've trained it, because you can train yourself to tolerate spin. You can train yourself to tolerate spin faster and in more planes of motion, because once we start adding things like moving our head while we're spinning or inverting while we're spinning, we're making greater demands. And specifically, the thing that we're making demands on and that is doing these adaptations is the vestibular system. So the vestibular system is what helps give you your sense of movement and orientation, specifically sort of the angle of your head, the head specifically. We'll talk about why in just a second, and also your sense of gravity. So these are things that we do a lot in pole. Obviously, if we're thinking about inverting, even bending over or doing floor work or, reaching down to touch your toes, all of those things count as an inversion. That's going to make demands on the vestibular system. Anything where we're moving our head a lot is going to make demands on the vestibular system. So if you're working on hair whips, if you're working on choreography that includes choreography, that's going to make demands on the vestibular system. Anything that has to do with balance, walking in heels, y'all, pretty big demand on the vestibular system to sort of figure out where we are in space and adjust and help our body stay upright in a nice stable way. That's going to make pretty big demands on the vestibular system. But in my experience, the number one thing that really gives pole dancers trouble is spinning, and specifically spin pole, because it goes real fast. But particularly if you're interested in doing more dynamic movements, if you're interested in inverting, that is a huge ask of our vestibular system. So let's talk about what it is. Y'all may be familiar with sort of what the inner ear looks like. It occurs to me I could have made slides for this, but I will take you on a journey to the theater of the mind. So you may be familiar with the part that kind of looks like a cinnamon bun or like a snail shell, the cochlea that's responsible for our sense of hearing. And then sort of branching off of it, there's these three loops that go in different directions. And so those part of the inner ear, you can kind of think of as being like a level, like a carpenter's level, but also that has glitter in it, like little bits of glitter, and is lined with velvet. It's got all these little hairs on the inside. So the three loops go in three different directions, right? And when you move your head in one of those directions, the fluid inside that loop shifts, and those little hairs pick up that shift and they send that as signal to your brain. Again, very, very like the sense of hearing. If you're familiar with that, same sort of Cilla, same sort of like, oh, I got activated. Here comes my neural signals. Very, 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 very similar. It's part of the same organ. And then the glitter, so these are little crystals, little otoliths, and they can also drag across the hairs as well. And basically, there's sort of 5 different directions that our vestibular system, or sensations that our vestibular system is capable of giving us information on. Some of them come from the otoliths, some of them come from the loops. I don't really feel like I need to go into that much detail here, but there's lots of great anatomy resources out there if you're interested in getting real nitty gritty. But the basics of it is, this is in our head, right? So it's only going to happen when we're moving our head, and it's going to happen more when we're moving our head. So if we're doing something like inverting and our head goes from upright to upside down, that's going to be a big amount of input. If we're doing something like rolling our necks, that's going to be a big amount of input. And also, it has a really close tie to our visual system. And I've got a good citation for you to go through and read through if you're interested in that. And our visual system and our vestibular system can actually sometimes kind of give us the same information, and they work together. They're co-workers. So you may have heard of the vestibular ocular reflex, possibly. And this is what lets you, look at something and then move your head around and still be able to look at that thing. So if you've ever seen like have you ever held a chicken and you know how like their head is just like in one point in space if they're looking at something, and then if you move the body around, the head stays in that one point in space? If instead of a chicken head, it were our eyeballs, that's what the vestibular ocular reflex is in charge of. And mismatches between the visual system and the vestibular system is what causes motion sickness. And my understanding is there's a lot of that sort of like underlying etiology that we don't have a very good, grasp of. It's an ongoing area of work. But the upshot is that if you're working on the vestibular system, especially if you're trying to improve performance in the vestibular system, visual drills will help as well because they work together very, very closely. So that's high level overview of what's going on there. And of course, I'll have citations and further reading in the down there, as always. I don't want to leave y'all hanging. There's some things that can affect the vestibular system as well that may make you more prone to dizziness. So a couple of things. One is aging. So just like with our hearing, as we get older, our Cilla, become more brittle, less flexible, and less able to pick up these signals accurately. The good news is that the aging effects creating vertigo. So vertigo is when your vestibular system's like, we're going to the side. And you're like, we are not. The information that you're sending me is incorrect at this point in time. So if you've ever experienced it, you're very familiar with what it feels like. But the age-related vertigo can be successfully targeted with specific exercises to help, recalibrate and strengthen the vestibular system and help you with your neuro performance, right? If that's something you're struggling with, talk to a physical therapist about it. A lot of physical therapists will specialize in helping folks who are struggling with dizziness, with vertigo. I won't be able to help you out with that, or your primary care provider. And I should say, if you are struggling with dizziness, there are a lot of medical causes that may be causing it. So talk to, I don't want to say a real doctor, but a medical doctor. Let's put it that way. So aging, right? It's just gonna take a little extra effort the older you are to really get your vestibular system in a place where it can handle a lot of input. The benefit of that is, of course, then your vestibular system can handle more input, potentially might reduce fall risk as we age, which is fantastic. Something that I want for my body, and also I would like you to have in your body. So that's the good news there. Another one that can really negatively affect your sense of balance, your vestibular system, just not being dizzy, is dehydration. Listen, I know everybody and their mother is always being like, hey, you gotta drink your water. You do have to drink your water. It's associated with, reduced performance and vertigo and dizziness. If you're polling, little sip of water every 15-20 minutes. It doesn't have to be a lot, just enough to sort of wet the inside of your mouth, and then make sure that you are drinking, 8 glasses of water a day. You know the drill. You know what you're supposed to be doing. Do it. It will help with the dizziness, I promise. Another thing which can really mess with your vestibular system is hormonal disorders. So this is another reason why you might want to see a doctor. If you are someone who menstruates, or you're someone who has gone through or is going through menopause, this may also affect you particularly. Low estrogen in particular is associated with more dizziness, more motion sickness, more challenges with balance, just sort of disruption in the vestibular system generally. So if you do menstruate, usually like right around menstruation and then right after ovulation are the 2 points where you're going to have a little bit of a dip. So if you're like, I love spin pull, but every 2 weeks, I love it less. I don't know, check a calendar, see when those dates are, and if that's what applies to you. And if you are, perimenopausal, going through menopause, obviously talk with your doctor, but something that can help raise your estrogen levels, like perhaps hormone therapy, might also be helpful. A couple other things. One is duration and intensity of spin, right? The more you do, the more you're asking of your system, the more you're requiring your nervous system to adjust to this change and deal with this big sensory input, the more likely you are to get dizzy, right? So if you go for 3 minutes spinning really fast, that's going to be a bigger ask of your body than to go for 3 seconds spinning really fast, right? You know that. Also, how fast you're spinning is also going to affect it. Slow spin, less than a fast spin. I'm sure you know this, but I think it's still worth saying, just in case, you're like, hey, I'm trying to train this. I'm trying to make modifications that'll work for me. You can spin slower and for less time. That will help. Also, if you're adding additional planes of motion, right, you're getting in more signals from your vestibular system. So if you were just, spinning in place, standing upright, looking at the horizon, that's going to be, a degree of strain on the system. If you add in a head turn while you're doing that, you add in more planes of motion as you're spinning, that's going to be a greater strain on the system, right? So especially if you're just working on spin, you don't got to invert yet, right? You can save that for later. You don't got to do hair tosses. Keep that for once you're feeling really solid on spin and you want to start to challenge yourself. And even for me, I am a spin demon. I love that. But if I'm on spin and also doing hair whips, multiple ones at the same time, that will still get me dizzy, especially depending on the direction of the hair whip. So just know that's another thing that you're going to be asking of your system to adapt. Also, eat. And I should say specifically, if you are hot, you're feeling physically hot, and you start to notice that you're getting dizzier than normal, you're starting to get motion sick, I would take a big step back. That is a symptom of heat exhaustion. It could also be a symptom of heat sensitivity. So maybe this is going to be something that affects people who have greater sensitivity to heat. That can be related to certain medications. That's a stage where I would really start talking, again, to a doctor to figure out if there's anything else going on and what else other support you can get. So those are some things that can affect your tolerance from spin, and that will also, change dynamically, right? If you've had 1 cup black coffee today and that's it, probably you're gonna get dizzy more easily, as opposed to you had 8 cups of water and your electrolytes are balanced, you're probably gonna get dizzy less easily. So those are things that are going to dynamically change that you can use to manage your dizziness, your motion sickness when you're spinning. But also, the vestibular system is capable of undergoing adaptation, right? And if you're a pole dancer, you have absolutely undergone sensory adaptation before, because shit hurts when we start. And then as we do it more and more and we get our nervous system accustomed to it, and we're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to die when I do a pole sit. This is a safe place to be. You stop getting the signal of pain, right? Similarly, if you can adapt your vestibular system to spin, eventually you will stop getting the signal of dizziness, right? Your nervous system will be like, okay, we can handle this. This is actually a safe place to be. This is something we do all the time, right? Like our muscles adapt because we, make strength requests of them, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we can get stronger. Your body can change over time, and that is something that to a certain degree we have control over. Not completely, right? But some aspects of it we definitely can, guide the direction of that change based on the demands that we make of our body. We can get more tolerant of spin. We can get more tolerant of spin faster in more planes. We can also improve our balance, which again is something that the vestibular system is really key in, right? So if you find, that you get really dizzy on the pole and that you have a really hard time in heels, that suggests to me that you would especially benefit from vestibular work, working on vestibular drills. So let's talk about drills a little bit. And this is, I wouldn't say it's a super new area of work in athletic training and, personal training and sports conditioning and all that, but it's not super widespread yet. And basically these are drills that are not being used for clinical application, right? This is not to treat anything. This is being used in healthy individuals to improve their athletic performance. So for example, in the pole example, for us to be able to tolerate spin for longer. Some of the drills may have some overlap with drills that somebody like a physical therapist would prescribe to you to treat a condition, but we are doing them for different purposes, if that makes sense. So it's sort of like folks who've done nerve glides with me, right? I am not doing it to treat a condition. I am doing it to help address in otherwise healthy individuals. If nerve tension is the thing that is making your range of motion limited, then the nerve glides can help to address that. But it is for performance enhancement and not to treat a medical condition. I just want to be very clear about why we're doing this, because even though there is like overlap in the methodology, the reasons are very different. And like, I'm not gonna be able to help you with your medical issues. So I just want to be very clear about that. And also, hopefully everyone you're working with is very clear about that and what their scope of practice is. So types of drills that we can work on. So one would be vision drills. So these would especially be ones that target that vestibular ocular reflex, the ability of your head movement and your eye movements to be coordinated. Both of your eyes to work together in particular. If you tend to have one eye that's, not as, again, subclinically, but one eye that's not as on task, shall we say, as the other, that can contribute to motion sickness. So those would be more vision drills. And we can also do head movement drills, right? Because remember, our vestibular system, like the actual perceptual organs, are inside our heads. So moving our heads helps to place demands on those organs. And some specific things that I like to do for pole. So the first thing is gentle head movements as part of your warm-up. These should be slow, they should be gentle. You're also gonna be helping to lubricate those facet joints in your cervical spine. So double whammy, and also bring a little bit of blood flow to the muscles of your neck. All good, but I always like to include some sort of gentle head and neck movement in all the planes of motion that you are capable of as part of your warm-up, right? So looking up and down, side to side, tilting, gentle head circles, maybe even just the front half of a head circle to help your vestibular system prepare for you to make greater demands of it. And also, like I mentioned, good for synovial fluid dissipation and also just general muscular warming, right? Get the blood flow in there. Don't do your gentle head movement drills in such a way that they count as cardio, please. Do the cardio separately. And we can also do targeted spin drills on the pole, right? Because that is eventually where we're going to. And for most pole dancers, you will get to the point where, just spinning in space. If for my members, by the way, there's a balance and vestibular drill workshop in the membership area that you can check out if you're interested. If you can't find it, just drop me a note and I'll send you the link specifically. Sorry, that is an aside. There will become a point at which working off the pole is you're going to sort of be at the ceiling of where you can get to with those exercises, because you're going to be at a point where you're going to need the degree, not the degree, but like the intensity of sensation that we're going to be getting from the pole. So my recommendation, start very, very, very small, right? Like I would say 5 to 10 seconds at the end of practice. And my recommendation for a position here is a fireman spin, fireperson, firefly. You hopefully amongst those names, you have one that you recognize, like a basic climb position. On spin pole, don't go super fast. Look directly in front of you. Keep your head upright, looking at the pole. Don't try to spot. If you don't know what spotting is, it's when you are turning in place, you pick a position to look at and you keep looking at it as long as you can as your body turns, and then your head whips around and you return your vision to that position. It keeps your vestibular organs more in place more of the time so you can handle more spin input. Not a good idea on a pole, so I would recommend soft gaze, not the pole, directly in front of you. Or if you are starting to move your body, I wouldn't try to focus on anything in the environment around you. Again, just sort of soft gaze, looking into the middle. Again, start very slow, 5 to 10 seconds, right at the end of your practice. You want to do it until you are a little bit dizzy, but can recover pretty quickly. If you are starting to feel nauseous, if you're starting to feel lightheaded, if it takes you more than like 3 or 4 seconds to stop feeling dizzy, you have gone way too hard. Bring it on back, right? We're gonna do this adaptation by very gently pushing the envelope of tolerance, right? It's just like when we're stretching, we don't want to stretch the point of pain. We want to stretch the point of like gentle discomfort, because we're asking our nervous system to adapt to new input and to feel safe in it. Very importantly, we're being like, hey, this thing that's just outside of what we usually do, it's fine, right? Yeah, okay. And then later on, you can push it a little bit farther. So really, really gentle, really, really slow, right at the end of practice. If you drove yourself there, maybe give yourself a good, 10, 15 minutes to recover afterwards. All right, that's been a big, long thing. I hope it's helpful. Like I said, I am a spin lover. I know lots of folks are not. And if it's not something that you're interested in training for specifically, guess what? You don't have to. Everything in pole is optional. Like Marlo Fiskin, beautiful pole dancer, beautiful mover, does not do spin pole hardly ever. And I don't think anyone would, be like, yeah, Marla doesn't know how to pole dance. Or if they do, they don't know what they're talking about, right? So if you're just like, I hate spin, I don't want to do it, I'm not interested in doing, this like slow build up and vestibular system adaptation, that is fine. But if you are, those are some tips. Nice and slow and steady. Be mindful of your head position, gentle neck movements at the beginning of class to help you warm up. And everyone should do those, really. Make sure you're hydrated. Definitely talk to a doctor. Like I said, dizziness, vertigo, symptoms of so many things. So if it's something that's really negatively affecting you, definitely cause for just like a checkout, right? Just like just a physical with your medical provider to make sure that everything is going well. All right, that's all I got for you this week. If you get any questions about spin pole or anything that I talked about, always happy to chit chat. I'm on Instagram. There's a contact form on the website now, so you can head over there and shoot me an email. And otherwise, I will talk to you very, very soon. Bye. Thanks so much for joining today. I hope this episode gave you a couple nuggets that you can take and apply to your own practice. And if you're interested in working with me, I teach online, so you can work with me from anywhere in the world. I teach flexibility classes, I teach strength classes, I teach pole tricks and technique, and my true love, freestyle flow, to really dive into developing your own authentic expression of movement on the pole. Those can all be found at slingthroughstrength.com. I'll talk with y'all next time in the next episode, and I hope to slink with you soon.